Horizon Forbidden West builds upon Aloy's journey in Zero Dawn in a lot of ways, not only introducing new mechanics and a brand new region to this far-flung future version of the Western United States, but also a host of new tribes and characters. It also answers a lot of the lingering questions from the first game with some huge curveballs, mostly in the form of Carrie and Moss's Tilda and her pals. All of that comes to a head in an ending that puts a fitting cap on Aloy's journey into the Forbidden West and handily sets up the inevitable threequel. But before we get into any of that, consider this your one and only warning that we're about to get into heavy spoiler territory. If you haven't played through the end of Forbidden West, now's your last chance to jump ship before we ruin any surprises for you. Okay, let's dig into how Horizon Forbidden West's ending satisfies some of the series' biggest mysteries and paves the way for an exciting future. The main focus of Forbidden West's final mission and cutscenes probably won't leave you too confused. Aloy and her team infiltrate the Far Zenith base to rescue Beta, retrieve the Gaia AI, and stop the immortal space bad guys' plans to wipe out Earth and rebuild it as they wish. The plan, as players will know, goes surprisingly well for the most part. No Mass Effect 2 everybody dies options here. There are a couple of close calls though, especially when the Zeniths release that frightening tidal wave of Spectre bots. Luckily, Beta injects the Hephaestus AI into the Zenith's network, allowing it to take over their advanced printing matrix, meaning that the RoboForge AI can create a lot of very big machines very quickly. This gives us probably the biggest lingering question of the mission before we get into the final showdown. As Silence points out, this move means that the now uncontained AI will likely escape back into the Cauldron network producing all these machines. Aloy assures him they were able to capture it once and can do it again, potentially setting up a thread that could be explored in either a DLC or a future game. After all, Horizon Zero Dawn's Frozen Wilds DLC was all about Hephaestus, and while Beta and Aloy may have removed the malicious code from the AI, it leaking back into the world after accessing the Zenith network still has major implications. Not only does it naturally facilitate more machines being manufactured in cauldrons, though we can't be sure if they'll be the same Apex variants that the corrupted AI produced, but it's possible that Hephaestus learned to create some new robots from their data. The Spectres show the Zeniths didn't necessarily stick to animal types for their machines, so we could certainly end up seeing this Hephaestus get creative with some of its designs moving forward. Though Silence muses that with the Zenith copy of the Apollo subfunction, they might not even need to go reclaim this particularly pesky AI, so the big question is, will Aloy and co have to find and control it, or just permanently wipe its data file? The rest of the mission itself is pretty straightforward. Silence's machine works, most of the Zeniths become Dinobot food, Aloy defeats the jerkwad who killed Varl, and the mom-to-be Zoe gets some much-deserved vengeance, and our heroine makes her way to the penthouse of Bad Guy Tower. The one thing you might have missed is if you chose to kill Regala during the Wings of the Ten mission. And while doing that earns you a cool bow, you can actually spare her and recruit her to your team for this last mission, promising her one great final battle. If she's along for the ride, you get well, I don't know if we can call it a redemption scene, but she'll sacrifice herself helping Aloy reach the base.
This way, demon! Ah! This is the death I was promised! Go!
Oscar winner Angela Bassett, ladies and gentlemen. Fast forward past the last bit of platforming, Aloy makes it to the top, rescues Beta, and has her dig into the Zenith network for info on something Alva mentioned called Nemesis. While it's not the kind that likes to wield a rocket launcher around Raccoon City, Aloy pieces together that it basically is an unstoppable killing machine, and that the Zeniths never planned to remain on Earth. Suddenly Tilda appears, blasting Gerard to death and becoming the last surviving Zenith, and confirms Aloy's theory and explains that Nemesis is a failed collective copy of the minds of other Far Zenith members. An abandoned experiment for Zeniths who sought not just physical immortality, but digital as well, in theory so they could exist in any form, made up of what were likely the Zeniths' worst minds. It festered for decades, eventually, as all AIs are wont to do, gaining sentience and breaking free of its containment to wreak swift and terrible vengeance on its creators, using their own knowledge of the space colony's security systems and vulnerabilities against them. And so the surviving Zeniths fled back towards Earth, but Nemesis followed. Probably the biggest reveal in all of this, beyond the fact that Horizon is now basically a smaller scale Mass Effect with lower tech, is that it wasn't the Zeniths that sent the extinction signal to Gaia Prime before the events of Horizon Zero Dawn, as was initially hinted at, but rather this Nemesis AI in an attempt to eliminate any safe harbor that the Zeniths might flee to. And it may seem strange, but this revelation satisfies a lingering question from Zero Dawn and neatly ties so much of this world together. The events of the whole series can be traced back to these rich dirtbags bailing on everybody else. Had they just stuck around to help with the Zero Dawn project, or at least not faked their deaths and fled to space to become immortal gods creating a murderous AI based on their own worst qualities, the signal that woke Hades never would have been sent, and Gaia may never have created Aloy to save the Earth in the first place. But, of course, they did, and life, or in this case a super powerful AI lady, found a way. So, with a terrifying AI monstrosity hurtling towards Earth with the sole intent to eradicate all life, Tilda's plea to Aloy is, bail on everyone and find some random planet in a random solar system to hide out from Nemesis. They can even take Gaia with them and rebuild the world like Elizabeth would have wanted, just somewhere else. Because surprise surprise, in case you missed those optional convos, she and Elizabeth weren't just friends, and Tilda's been carrying a torch, not to mention a ton of guilt, for 1,000 years. So it's not necessarily a huge surprise when she doesn't really ask Aloy to come along so much as she demands it. So the two duke it out when Aloy, understandably, refuses. After a battle against Tilda's Megazord, Silence shows up to smugly tell Aloy about how he knew everything about Nemesis the whole time and just never looped Aloy in because she's too stubbornly dedicated to helping people. His plan is to take the Zenith ship and the Apollo database, become immortal like them, and escape Nemesis. But when the rest of Aloy's team arrives, triumphant in their victory against the Zeniths, he sees all this camaraderie and decides to stay. Though, let's be honest, Silence has never acted purely out of good intention, so he probably sees some value and potential success in staying behind rather than fleeing.
You people are going to need all of the help you can get.
Before the credits roll, but after this very telling shot of the group's uneasy victory with the big Nemesis ball looming over them, we see the team striking off across the plains to start gathering allies for the fight ahead. Eren, Zoe, and Katalo all head back to their respective tribes. It seems as though Zoe finally got the chorus to pull their heads out of the sand, and although we see a Quen ship sailing back to whatever remains beyond the Pacific Ocean, it seems like Alva has remained with the team to presumably continue their studies of the Old Ones and the Eastern tribes. Perhaps we'll see in another installment, whether it's a proper sequel or something like Call of the Mountain for PSVR 2, what's become of humanity in Africa or Europe or South America. Lastly, before we get the final shot highlighting Aloy, Beta, and Gaia's unique family unit, we get a look at the other Sobek clone doing some work with Gaia and her sub-functions, which now include those that the Zeniths had copies of but were thought to be previously lost. Hephaestus and Hades are naturally absent, but you can see here that the Apollo database has been restored as well. Considering this was the AI responsible for educating this new era of humanity, it's going to be very interesting to see the effect that it has on the world between now and the next installment in the series, whenever that might be. Of course, a third Horizon game has yet to be officially confirmed, but with Apollo back in the mix, new cultures appearing across the world, Hephaestus still on the run, or the Nemesis threat looming, there's a lot to look forward to in another adventure from the Guerrilla Games team. For now, you can check out IGN's comprehensive coverage on Forbidden West, including some of our guides and walkthroughs to help you pick out every last collectible, or a breakdown of some of our favorite little details that the developers built into this adventure. For everything else, you're already in the right place here at IGN.